Have you ever wondered why the men who seem to care less, who don't chase, who don't ask, who don't explain somehow end up being the ones women want the most? You've seen it. Maybe you've lived it. You gave everything. You listened. You showed up. You were kind. You were attentive. You made her feel safe, valued, seen. And in return, you were slowly, quietly discarded. Not with rage, not with drama, but with distance, with indifference, with silence. And then there's another man. He does less. He says less. He doesn't worship her. He doesn't follow up on every mood swing or try to decode every word. He doesn't hand her emotional comfort on a silver tray. And she craves him, obsessively. She waits for his messages. She justifies his silence. She defends his absence. She fantasizes about changing him. Why? You think it's a game, but it's worse than a game. It's a psychological loop wired into evolutionary biology, reinforced by emotional survival instincts and masked by modern narratives of love. And if you don't see it for what it is, you will keep offering your heart to people who were trained to get high on the chase and bored by your presence. Here's the truth most men don't want to hear. Women don't desire emotional safety in the way you've been led to believe. They desire emotional intensity, emotional polarity, tension, and the man who gives too much, too soon, too easily, he short-circuits that tension. He kills the unpredictability. He removes the need to work for anything. And without that effort, there is no investment. And without investment, there is no attachment. You showed up too clean, too available, too selfless. You were rewarded not with love, but with emotional invisibility. And she didn't do it to hurt you. She did it because her nervous system is wired to respond to challenge, to mystery, to the feeling of earning your attention, not being smothered by it. When you poured yourself out, thinking that being emotionally transparent was the path to connection, what you didn't see is that transparency without boundaries turns into emotional self-erasure. Let's make this brutally clear: the more accessible you are, the less desirable you become. Not because women are cruel, not because they don't want love, but because their emotional arousal system, the same system that drives attachment and desire, needs contrast. It needs distance to build tension, and it needs effort to justify obsession. The men who don't respond right away, they create mental gaps that she fills with fantasy. The men who don't validate her every move, they become emotionally valuable because she has to reach for them. The men who prioritize their purpose over her approval, they trigger a subconscious drive to prove worth. That's what makes her want more. Not your declarations, not your poems, not your loyalty. You were raised to believe that if you were just good enough, loving enough, consistent enough, she would choose you. But that belief is a trap, because good enough was never the problem. You were never chosen because you didn't make her feel the gap between desire and reward. You didn't make her feel the push-pull, the anticipation, the dopamine cycle of craving. You didn't give her space to doubt. And here's the dark irony: the men who confuse her the most are the ones she cannot stop thinking about. Not because they're better, not because they're more attractive, but because confusion demands emotional resolution, and her mind stays locked in the loop until she gets it. That's how addiction forms. Not from pleasure, but from intermittent validation. You think it's love. She thinks it might be. But her body is chasing the chemical spike of uncertainty. So when you say, "I did everything right," you're not wrong. You did what a rational, emotionally grounded man is supposed to do. But attraction doesn't operate on logic. It thrives on contrast. And if you remove the chase, the resistance, the uncertainty, you strip the situation of the very tension that fuels desire. This isn't about pretending to be an asshole. This isn't about playing games. It's about learning that giving a woman everything too soon is not generosity, it's self-abandonment disguised as love. Because the man who gives everything away before it's earned isn't expressing strength. He's signaling low value. He's communicating that he doesn't believe he's worth waiting for, reaching for, or earning. And women don't want what they don't have to earn. It's not personal, it's primal. You've been told that being honest, open, and emotionally available makes you a good man. And in many ways, that's true. But what no one told you is this: it doesn't necessarily make you wanted. It makes you appreciated. It makes you safe. But safe doesn't always translate into desired. Not in the way that lights a fire. Not in the way that keeps her awake at night. And that's where the emotional trap begins. Because as a man, your biology rewards you for providing. Your reward system is designed around utility: do more, give more, prove more. It feels good to be needed. But for many women, attraction isn't rooted in how much you give. It's rooted in how much she feels. And the feeling she craves isn't always comfort. It's fascination. It's emotional movement. And that doesn't come from consistency alone. It comes from unpredictability, from contrast, from tension. That's why the man who's slightly elusive, not rude, not disrespectful, but simply self-possessed and hard to pin down, holds more gravity in her world than the one who texts her every morning and night, without fail. The former pulls her into curiosity, the latter becomes routine. And routine, no matter how loyal, no matter how kind, doesn't fuel obsession. You were taught to equate attention with love, so you gave yours fully, thinking she would return it in kind. But attention without scarcity loses power. If something is always available, it stops feeling valuable. It becomes background noise. That's how you became invisible, by trying to be present at all times. And still, you can't understand how she could cry in your arms one week and seem indifferent the next. You replay conversations, you analyze texts. You think maybe you said too much, or not enough. Maybe you gave too little, or too much. But here's the truth: what changed wasn't your words, it was her internal emotional voltage. And that voltage is not sustained by comfort. It's sustained by contrast. A woman doesn't fall for the man who makes her feel the same every day. She falls for the man who creates a landscape of emotional peaks and valleys, not on purpose, not through manipulation, but because he doesn't give her everything she asks for. He makes her earn his softness. He makes her reach for his attention, and that effort binds her to him. Because where effort goes, emotion follows. You gave without her reaching. You showed up before she missed you. You revealed your heart before she earned your trust. And she didn't know what to do with that. Because what required no cost felt disposable. And the more you tried to prove you were worth staying for, the more she pulled away. Not because she hated you, but because she didn't feel anything she had to fight for. That's the pattern. And it's cruel if you don't understand it. But once you do, it's liberating. Look at the men she chased. They weren't always richer. They weren't always better looking. But they had one trait in common. They didn't need her affection. They didn't orient their identity around being chosen. They were in control of their own rhythm, and that made her lean in. That made her try. The harder truth is this: the more emotionally available you are too early, the more emotionally unattractive you become, because you've signaled that you don't require standards to give intimacy. You've shown that you give commitment before she's proven alignment, and she interprets that not as strength, but as desperation in disguise. So she pulls away, and you, not understanding why, double down. You become more accommodating, more emotionally expressive. You reach for her with words like, "I just want to understand," But what she really feels is you don't make her feel enough to want to explain. Because it was never about logic, it was about tension, it was about effort, it was about earning your presence. She wanted to wonder where she stood, not out of cruelty, but because that wondering builds desire. That emotional uncertainty is the fire that heats her feelings. And you killed it when you handed her your soul before she earned your respect. This is why men who operate from self-worth, from emotional control, from mission not validation, attract more than men who bend over backwards to be loved. Because women don't fall in love through comfort alone. They fall in love through challenge met with reward. And if there's no challenge, there's no emotional return. You thought being the good guy was enough, but it's not about being good. It's about being grounded, boundaried, emotionally unavailable until she's emotionally present, not to punish her, but to protect your energy. Because once she knows your worth isn't up for negotiation, she sees what she's never had to fight for before a man who doesn't need to be needed. You've been living in a system that punishes your clarity and rewards your confusion. The more direct you are with your feelings, the less she responds. The more available you are, the faster her interest fades. And it messes with your mind because everything you were told about love, about being a real man, gets shattered in front of you. So you start doubting yourself. You wonder if you're too intense, too emotional, too needy. But you're not. You were just early. You gave emotional intimacy to someone who hadn't earned it. You let her into your mind before she even proved she could respect it. And now, you're emotionally bankrupt, trying to figure out how it all fell apart. Here's how it works, and you need to hear this clearly. The more a woman has to emotionally invest to get your attention, the more she values it. It's not because she's shallow. It's because that investment builds the story she tells herself about you. She needs to feel something. And if all she feels is ease, she won't build attachment. Not deep attachment. Not the kind that sticks through conflict, boredom, or silence. But you gave her the end of the story on the first page. You handed over the happily ever after before she ever felt the suspense. You removed the emotional struggle. You told her how you felt before she even had to ask. And now you're watching her pull back, and you're telling yourself, she must not have wanted something real. No, she didn't want something predictable. Look back at the moments when she was most drawn to you. It wasn't when you were pouring your heart out. It was when you were busy, focused, vague, not cold but consumed by your own life. That space made her curious. That silence made her chase. That gap in your attention created tension she wanted to resolve. But you didn't notice, because you thought love meant full access. You thought affection meant constant communication. You thought consistency would win her over. And while consistency builds trust, it doesn't ignite passion. Trust keeps her from leaving, but passion makes her stay. And passion is built in contrast, not in comfort. Here's what you don't realize: you trained her to lose interest. Not because you're boring, not because you're weak, but because you gave her all the answers before she asked any questions. You turned your emotional world into an open book, and she closed it before the second chapter. Because people don't read what they don't wonder about. You didn't trigger her imagination, you satisfied it too early, and now you're angry. You want to blame her, you want to blame modern dating, but you need to look deeper. You need to understand what you're doing with your energy, because you've been operating like a man trying to earn love. You're not supposed to earn love, you're supposed to filter it. When a woman doesn't have to wonder if she matters to you, when she doesn't have to work for your time, your attention, your emotion, she doesn't value it. That's not manipulation, that's basic human psychology. We value what we fight for, what we struggle to earn, what we might lose. And when you remove the possibility of loss, you remove the urgency of love. That's why she spirals for the guy who gives mixed signals. That's why she obsesses over the one who doesn't confirm anything. It's not that she likes being heard. It's that her brain gets chemically addicted to the hope of resolution. And that hope is what keeps her chasing. You offered her certainty, too fast, too freely, and now you're paying the price. But it doesn't have to stay that way. The key isn't to become a manipulator, it's to become emotionally sovereign, to detach your sense of value from her reactions, to stop offering yourself before you've decided she's worth the offer. You need to step out of the cycle where her interest determines your confidence. You need to stop trying to be liked and start becoming someone whose presence is rare, valuable, earned, because the less you need her approval, the more she needs your attention. That's the trade-off. That's what shifts the dynamic. When you stop proving and start observing, when you stop chasing and start filtering, when you stop flooding her with access and start creating selective moments of connection. The man who can delay emotional gratification, the man who can hold his affection like it matters, is the man she feels drawn to. Why? Because he's not emotionally starving. He's not begging for connection. He's choosing it. And choice is power. Let her wander. Let her reach. Let her earn the next step. That's how desire is built. Not through constant access, but through calibrated scarcity. You don't need to be distant. You need to be disciplined. With your time, with your energy, with your emotional expression. Because when she feels that you value yourself more than her validation, she'll lean in not because you forced her, but because her instincts tell her this man doesn't need me. And that makes me want him even more. You were never supposed to chase her approval. You were supposed to build a life that was so grounded, so real, so self-directed that she wanted to be part of it. But instead, you made her the life. You made her attention the goal. You calibrated your words to keep her happy. You adjusted your tone when she withdrew. You bent your boundaries, hoping she'd see you as loving. All she saw was a man without emotional gravity, and gravity is everything. Because here's what happens the moment she senses that her approval defines your self-worth. She loses respect. Not consciously, not deliberately, but instinctively. The moment she becomes your compass. She stops feeling your direction. You become reactive, not grounded. You orbit around her moods, and a man without center is not a man she can follow, admire, or trust. So what makes women want men more? Not charm, not wealth, not how many compliments you give or how many problems you solve. It's how anchored you are in your own value, even in her silence. Especially in her silence. Because women test men, sometimes through words, sometimes through withdrawal, sometimes through contradiction. And it's not because they want to destroy you, it's because they want to feel you, not your reactions, not your explanations, but your center. The man who doesn't flinch when she goes quiet, he communicates strength. The man who doesn't chase when she pulls away, he signals abundance. The man who doesn't collapse into justification every time she's upset, he earns her respect not because he dominates, but because he doesn't abandon himself. You thought that giving her everything would bring her closer, but she didn't want everything. She wanted to see if you had anything worth protecting. She wanted to feel a boundary, not a surrender. She wanted to know that your world would not fall apart if she chose to walk away. Because that's the paradox, she only trusts the man who doesn't need her to stay. So now you sit here, wondering what went wrong. Wondering why she ran toward the man who treats her like an option and ignored you, the one who gave her everything. And the truth is brutal, she didn't fall for him. She fell for who she became in his presence. She became a seeker. She became someone who had to try, someone who had to figure out how to matter. And that effort built emotional momentum. It built tension. That tension became attachment. And that attachment, that's what you were trying to buy with kindness. But you can't shortcut desire, and this is the cost. Not just of rejection, but of internal erosion. Because when you give yourself away without being chosen, You chip away at your masculinity. You become passive. You stop leading. You stop building. You lose your direction. And worst of all, you start believing that love is something you earn by being agreeable, soft, endlessly available. It's not. Love, real love, begins with respect. And respect doesn't come from being nice. It comes from being solid. It comes from saying no, from walking away when you're not seen, from withholding your depth until someone shows they can handle it. You think being open makes you noble, but unearned openness is just another form of self-betrayal, because it tells the world you'll hand your emotional treasures to anyone who smiles at you. And that's not strength, that's desperation dressed up as kindness. And she can feel it. She can feel when your compliments come from hunger, when your attention is just a bid for hers, when your presence is a leash, not a gift. And when she senses that, she runs. Because the masculine energy she craves, the energy that makes her lean in, is not needy, it's contained. She wants to feel your affection, but she wants to earn your availability. She wants to feel chosen, not by a man who gives that choice to everyone, but by the one who chooses carefully, deliberately, sparingly. That's what makes women want men more. Not how much you give, but how little you need. Not how loud you are, but how unshaken. Not how much you talk about your value, but how clearly you embody it. This is the shift. When you stop proving and start filtering. When you stop asking and start watching. When you stop offering yourself just to be chosen and start choosing based on effort, presence, and mutual energy. It doesn't mean you become cold. It means you become clear. It means your time is earned. Your attention is earned. Your softness is earned. And once she feels that your love has weight, not because it's scarce, but because it's sacred, she'll stop running. Because she won't want to lose the first man who didn't beg her to stay. You've been trained your entire life to believe that your value as a man comes from what you give. Your time, your affection, your consistency. And when those things go unreturned, when your messages get left unread, when your effort is met with silence, when your presence is taken for granted, you don't just feel rejection. You feel confusion, shame. Like maybe you're the problem. Like maybe if you just said the right thing, done a little more, tried a little harder, it would have worked. But here's the truth. No one tells you it didn't fail because you weren't enough. It failed because you didn't withhold enough. You didn't make her invest. You didn't make her wonder. You didn't protect your energy like it mattered. You gave her gold before she even proved she could carry it. That's the real cost. Not just the loss of the woman, but the loss of your self-respect. Because every time you shrink yourself to be more likable, every time you offer emotional intimacy without it being earned, every time you betray your own standards just to keep her, you reinforce a lie that your worth is conditional. That love is something you barter for. That desire is something you can manufacture by giving more than anyone else. It's not. And you need to stop. You need to stop equating kindness with availability. You need to stop interpreting your emotional depth as currency. You need to stop offering loyalty to women who haven't even demonstrated respect. What makes women want men more isn't generosity, it's selectivity. The man who knows his time is valuable isn't stingy, he's discerning. The man who doesn't emotionally unravel when she pulls away isn't distant, he's composed. The man who doesn't overshare before she's earned his truth isn't hiding, he's guarding his kingdom. And she feels it, not as arrogance, but as weight. Because there's a gravity to a man who doesn't move just because she's uncomfortable. A man who doesn't flinch when she gets cold. A man who doesn't self-abandon just to avoid conflict. That man, he's rare. He's not easily swayed. He doesn't need to be chosen to feel secure. And that creates a magnetic pull because women want to earn what they respect. They want to feel like your affection is a prize, not a default. That your time is sacred, not scattered. That your energy is a gift, not a plea. And when they feel that they stay, they lean in. Not because they're manipulated, but because they feel safe in your strength. Not safe like you'll never leave. Safe like you won't collapse. That's the difference. The moment she senses that your confidence exists regardless of her, that your emotional state is not a reaction to her approval, that your presence is not dependent on her validation, that's the moment she starts to respect you, crave you, fear losing you, because she sees you as whole. And a whole man cannot be controlled. He cannot be broken by silence. He cannot be baited into chasing. He cannot be shaken out of his frame. That's the man she remembers. That's the man she wants. Not the one who chased, the one who didn't need to. So now the choice is yours. You can keep handing your heart to people who haven't proven they deserve it. You can keep explaining your worth to women who don't listen. You can keep trying to be understood by someone who doesn't care to understand you. Or you can stop. You can draw the line. You can hold the frame. You can become the man whose presence is earned, not assumed. Whose standards are high, not because he's bitter, but because he's awake. And when you do that, you'll see the shift. Not just in how women respond, but in how you respond. You'll stop chasing attention. You'll stop fearing rejection. You'll stop sacrificing your dignity to be liked. And you'll start to feel it, the quiet, untouchable power of knowing that you don't need to beg for connection. You filter it because you finally understand. She didn't break you. She revealed what you were too afraid to protect.